Father, thank you for this time together this morning. Pray that you'll bless this group, that we might all learn something today. Pray that you'll watch over us and give us the things we need in our daily lives. Pray that you'll open our hearts and our minds, that we might be receptive to what you would like us to learn today. Take something away to share with other people today and help us apply this to our lives. We thank you and we give you the praise. In Jesus' name. Amen. Hello everyone, this is the 5th Epical Revelation Fellowship. I'm Reverend Dr. Roger Paul, and today is July 28th, 2013. I had to think about that one. And tonight, or this morning, we're going to continue with our studying on the foreword of the Urantia book, starting with section 1, paragraph 14. And that's on page 3-1 in the Urantia book. And on the slides, starts on slide 25. It's reading it through the slides. Okay. I'll let you keep track of this too. Let's talk a little bit about what we talked about last time. A quick overview here. I'm on the wrong one. 3:14. Last time we talked about, we started out with basically the introduction to the foreword and how it affects us, right? What they're trying to say to us. And then we went on to start talking about deity and divinity and our misconceptions of deity and divinity. And they started explaining a little bit what deity and divinity actually means. And we got down to paragraph 114, I believe it was. I went over it
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, please do.
In your own words, in simple terms, how would you describe deity and divinity?
Deity is that which comes from God, or divinity is that which comes from God. And deity, in my own words, is anyone God assigns that responsibility. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So if you think of deity, really, there's really only one deity. Who would that be? God the Father, right?
Mm-hmm.
And who? The Paradise Trinity, of course, the Son and the Spirit. They are really the only primary deities, right? There's extensions of the primary deities through the absolutes. If you think about it, God the absolute, that would be God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit, Paradise, deity, absolute, the universal absolute, and unqualified absolute, right? Those are extensions of whom? God the Father, right? With the exception of Paradise. Paradise is the perfect pattern. That's really the way I look at it. Now, divinity, to me, is God assigning or sharing the responsibility of divinity with each other, with other people. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's start on this first paragraph, 114. You want to take that one? And we'll go around from there.
Deity may be existential as in the eternal Son, experiential as in the Supreme Being, associative as in God the Sevenfold, undivided as in the Paradise Trinity.
Okay, let's talk about this first paragraph a little bit. Who's the three existential deities? Always. God the Father, Son, and Spirit, right? Meaning they have always existed and they always will exist, right? Experiential. What is that? What does that mean to us?
Still going Still learning,
still learning, developing.
developing, yeah.
Hmm. And the guide of that would always be the Supreme Being, right? Okay. Associative. What's God the sevenfold? Y'all remember? God the sevenfold is the seven master spirits, right?
I got a question about that. Yeah, we were talking about the Ancient of Days last week.
Ancients of Days. Yeah.
Now the seven master spirits, so there's a master spirit for each super universe.
Right.
And then there's the Ancient of Days.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the hierarchy, right?
Right.
Okay, and then who else do we have? We have the creative sons and daughters, right? Right. And if we go back up the other way from the seven master spirits, who would be God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit, right? And that's God the sevenfold. Starts out with the existential deity, comes down to two, and the Supreme Being. Experiential deity, and then what do you end up with? The finite deity, right? So you cover, God the sevenfold covers from existential, experiential, and finite. And that's the other part of God, right? And that's why they call it what? Associative. Why would it be called associative?
Deals with all levels.
It's with all levels. And it takes those beings and their actions to finish the plan of God. So you can think of it, boy, this is a good example last night. God has this huge, unimaginable plan, right, for the universes, for the future. And the associative deities help fulfill God's plan, don't they? They put the things in action that makes God's plan come into existence. That's why you would call them associate. They associate with each other, don't they? And they associate with God. Okay. And the undivided Paradise Trinity, which we know what that's about, right? The Trinity is always undivided. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Roy, you want to take that one?
All right. Deity is the source of all that which is divine. Deity is characteristically and invariably divine. But all that which is divine is not necessarily deity, though it would be coordinated with deity and with we tend towards some phase of unity with deity, spiritual, minor, or personal.
Okay, what is not divine? What's a deity that's not divine? How about the unqualified? That's right.
Say that again.
The unqualified absolute.
It's not divine.
It's not divine. Why is it not divine?
Unqualified because it's not finished?
It's not, well,
It's not personal.
It's not personal.
It's not personal?
It's that part of the movement of God out in the primordial space, organizing super universes, right?
So that's not divine?
It's not divine. It has a divine purpose, but it is not divine. It's not a personality. Okay? It's part of the I am. But it's considered as one of the absolutes. In other words, it will always be there, so they consider it a entity, right? What else is not divine? Paradise, right? Paradise is not divine, is it? It's a thing. It's not a being. Paradise is the pattern for all things. Okay? So it's the perfect pattern for all things. So we're trying to create all these super universes and all these outer space levels, and we're trying to do what? We're trying to duplicate the perfection in paradise. But does that make it divine or deity? No. It's got a divine purpose, doesn't it? But it's not a person. It's a thing, right? It's a location. It's the dwelling place of God. So we shouldn't worship paradise, should we? Okay. Let's go to the next one. Rodney, you want to take the next one?
Why, sure. The one sentence here, divinity is characteristic, unifying, and coordinating quality of deity.
Okay, so we know now that the divinity is a characteristic, right? It's that glue, isn't it? It's kind of like glue. It brings everything together, you know, divine glue. Okay.
And before bringing everything together, there was the splitting part of it, right?
Yeah.
So God with unity in Himself,
In itself.
split
himself out.
millions of ways.
That's right.
And the divinity seems to be the way of coordinating all those pieces
Mhm.
floating out there.
Now, it keeps them separate, doesn't it, Gilles? But it, in essence, brings them back together at the same time, doesn't it? Because what happens? As we become more divine, what do? We go back to God.
toward. We go
toward
back
God,
in.
God the
Yeah,
Father.
toward God the Father.
Then when we get to God the Father,
Amen.
we go back out again. Then,
That's right. That's how that works. Yeah.
you know, so it makes you wonder, doesn't it? In our future, billions of years ago, think of the Creator sons. They start out as perfect, creative creators, right? On Paradise. Samaritan, that's their world, right? They start out perfect, and they go out to the 7 outer space levels, don't they? Okay?
They do?
Yeah, they go out to create their universes. I mean, the 7 super universes.
Okay.
Yeah. I see what you
They do?
They do?
That was great.
Okay. Now think about this. Through the Supreme Being is the experiential part of God, right? It's that part of God that experiences. So the Creator Sons and the Creative Mother Spirits create these universes and increase the experience of the Supreme Being. So in doing that, what are they doing? They're going back toward God, aren't they? As the super universes get closer and closer to light and life, in essence, we draw closer to divinity and we draw closer to God, don't we? Okay, now think of this. When all 7 super universes are settled in light and life, what happens? We go out to the outer space levels. Now, who do they say will be an active part of that? The Supreme Being and the Creator and Sons, the Creative Mother Spirits. So if you think about it, it's almost like divine respiration. Think about that. We go in and we go back out. Now after the 7 outer space levels, or 4 that we know about, let's say there's going to be 7. After they're completed, what would keep God from, after that reaches light and life, bringing all things back to Himself and going back out, expanding even further, if you think about it. So it's a wonderful concept because the Creator Sons constantly are going back and forth to paradise doing different things. So, you know, maybe that's part of a respiration of divinity. You think about it. It's God breathing, if you think about it. Isn't it? Yeah. It's an interesting concept. Okay.
And they keep talking about ages.
Ages.
And it sounds like there are some milestones,
Yeah.
like you reach
This milestone.
and then come back, the other milestone.
And remember we talked a few minutes ago about God's plan? It may be part of all God's plan. It's these graduations, as you say. You know?
Sure it is.
Yeah. Pam, do you want to read today?
I'm going to pass today.
Okay. All right. You want to take it? Yeah.
I'm looking to see where we start.
Oh, divinity is a creature comprehensible? So, 117.
Well, you,
Divinity, yeah.
Oh,
well,
sorry.
you know the big
Okay. Divinity is creature comprehensible as truth, beauty, and goodness, correlated in personality as love, mercy, and ministry, disclosed on impersonal levels as justice, power, and sovereignty. Right? I think Roger could probably preach a long sermon on that.
Yeah, you could spend the rest of the day just on that
Yeah.
that paragraph, right?
Yep.
Okay. What does the book keep saying over and over and over and over again, all the way through? Truth, beauty, and goodness, doesn't it? Constantly. I mean, almost every paper, they mention truth, beauty, and goodness, right?
And it seems to be related to the mental level, the
That's
mind level.
The mind level, that's right, you're right. Okay. Correlated in personality as love, mercy, and ministry. Now, what do you have to do to get to paradise? You have to do something. That's the God of action, right? That's the Supreme Being. What does the Supreme expect us to do? Not to sit around and just worship all day, does it? It wants us to do something. It wants us to function. It wants us to help one another. It wants us to minister to one another, to love one another, right? And have mercy on one another. That's what this correlation. And what is that? That is part of personality, isn't it? What else is it part of? It's part of the Spirit. So this is part of the correlation of the Spirit ministry and the Son, controlled by what? The conjoint actor, the infinite Spirit. Right? Okay? And disclosed on impersonal levels. Now notice it says impersonal levels there, as justice, power, and sovereignty. Why does it say impersonal on those? Because the universe is run in an orderly fashion, doesn't it? And these things, justice, power, and sovereignty, are what? Are basically the rules of the universe, aren't they? They say, this is the way the universe is run. This is your playground. This is the way it's set up. We expect you to react in certain ways so that you're part of the playground, right? What did Lucifer do when he went outside this justice, power, and sovereignty?
That's all it is.
He did. He went outside the playground, didn't he? Now, is that allowed in the universe? Only for a short time, because you can't have what? Perfection and imperfection in the same universe. Okay? So, when you rebel, do you see why the price of sin is death? I mean, it only makes sense. You can't have a harmonious universe with everybody just doing anything, can you? There's certain things you have to live within certain boundaries. And if we don't live within those certain boundaries, we're hurting one another, we're not loving one another, we're not giving each other mercy, and we're definitely not ministering to each other. So when Lucifer went outside of this level of justice, power, and sovereignty, was he thinking of anybody else? No. The me syndrome, right? It's all about me. And this is what we have to learn in this life, in our own lives. We have to watch out for other people, not just us, right? We have to make sure we stay within those boundaries, but we share this with other individuals, don't we? Okay, so...
Well, I mean, it's really not about us at all. It's about everybody else.
It's about everybody
and
else.
how we relate and interact and how we treat them and who we prefer.
Over other people?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It's
mm-hmm.
less and less and less about us.
That's right. That's right.
But we talked about discernment last week, and about the people that you want in your surrounding, because what you deal with makes you positive or negative.
It does. It does.
And I'm finding that, I have to get away from around that doesn't uplift me or give me positive input, be it family, work, church, whatever.
Anywhere. Yeah.
Because, it is my choice to be happy here, and being that I feel that I'm learning, I feel like other people have to learn too.
Yeah.
I think that everybody's given this opportunity, but a lot of times we close that out because of me.
We do.
And so...
do you notice how much easier it is to deal with people that are like-minded with you too?
Yeah.
If you deal with someone who is a believer in God, those people are much easier to deal with than a non-believer, aren't they?
Exactly.
Because the non-believer has no moral values.
Exactly.
They don't care about anybody else. It is that me syndrome. Where if you get around believers, at least they have that tinge of mercy, don't they?
Exactly.
They have mercy on one another. They think about, well, how's this going to affect someone else? And when you stop thinking about how that affects someone else, you're in trouble, aren't you?
Well, just their whole worldview, how they view everything is it's so profound because they're very world centered and world focused, and it's really hard to relate to.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But on the same token, when you're hanging around with people that are ungodly constantly, is it easier to fall into that ungodliness?
Oh, sure.
You know?
Well, yeah, yes and no. I would say yes and no. And I say that because, I mean, you know, through my own experience. Now, you know, and I'm just using this experience. I have a couple of brothers that, you know, they're engineers. And, you know, I can see how that me syndrome works in them.
Yeah. Constantly. Yeah.
Syndrome.
I did this.
I did this. I'm saying, well, I just sold my house in Texas, and we just building a house out here in front. I did this. And it never enters the picture where God enabled me.
Yeah.
To do this, you
Yeah.
know, and so, you know, I can see it on that level. Then I have another brother that's, you know, selfish. That's selfish. Every time he comes to you, and I'm just talking about in my personal family. You know, every time you come in, you know that if you don't watch it, you out of something.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and being that, you know, reading the Urantia book, and coming to the place that I'm coming with, and I'm still going, and trying to realize and be fair to everybody that I deal with and help as I can, those that I can help.
Yeah.
You know, I look at those around me and I say, okay, well, you know, there's nothing I can do with that right now. God, you got to work with that. I'm just going to let you have that.
That's right.
I'm going to let you
Outside
have
of my realm, anyway.
It's above my pay grade,
Yeah.
I'm
right?
going to ease on around there.
Right.
Ain't nothing I can do with that. That's going to just, if I stick with it too long, it's probably going to make me mad.
But y'all want to hear an interesting story? Last night we rewatched a movie called The Adjustment Bureau, and that was one of the things the guy said. These guys, they acted like they don't really explain who these guys are. That, you know, it's just a fantasy.
Right.
But anyway, one of the things they kept trying to change this guy's life, so they got higher people on the job. You know, and when he asked, well, why are they doing it? He says, it's above my pay grade. All right, let's keep going. Jill, you want to take the next one?
Divinity may be perfect, complete, as on existential and creator levels of paradise perfection. He may be imperfect, as on experiential and creature levels of time-space evolution. And it may be relative, neither perfect nor imperfect, as on certain Havana levels of existential, experiential relationships.
Okay, so we got three different things they're talking about here, don't they? They're talking about existential, right? Perfection. We're talking about experiential, creature evolution, which is imperfection, right? And then we're also talking about Havana, which is neither perfect or imperfect. Did y'all catch that?
Yeah.
It's not perfect, it's not imperfect. It's in between. So here we come back to the three levels, the absolute, the absonite, and the finite again, don't we? Havana being the absonite. So what they're saying here is these existential, experiential relationships. What are we talking about there? We're talking about the supreme interacting with the absonite beings, aren't we? That's what they're talking about here. So we have slight imperfection interacting with what? The supreme, which will eventually be what? Experiential perfection, right? So it's not yet perfect, but it's on its way to being perfect. So it's neither. Does that make sense?
How do we qualify the state of someone who has reached on the finite level, on the physical level, basically level of adjusted fusion, which is perfection in the realm of...
That's the perfection in the realm of the material.
Material.
The material finite. Not complete finite.
Very,
just
very,
the
very finite.
very finite, that's right, the very basic level. When you attune your soul or your personality to the will of God, to the point where your will and God's will are the same. In other words, God's will always overrides anything in your will. That's your point of what? Fusion. Okay? Because you've given your personality to complete control to your thought adjuster, to God.
I would say it's
To
a
the will of
prerequisite.
God.
It's a
Yeah.
prerequisite, not messy. I don't think that's sufficient, but it's definitely is a prerequisite for truth.
It is. It is. Yeah.
But what that state, when you reach that, which is the state that Jesus reached when, what
But
do we
that's-
call, is it called the perfect state, or is it
No.
called in between state, or what is it?
No, it's relative perfection,
Relative perfection.
relative to the situation, right?
So isn't it the same as this neither perfect nor imperfect?
Yes,
Is it this? Is it
it's the same thing.
same thing? Right?
Yeah.
Relative perfection.
Certain relative. Remember that chart we read not long ago about the different types of perfection? Some beings are perfect in all areas and non-perfect in others, and that's part of this. You know, when you reach adjuster fusion, you're just on the beginning stages of that spiritual progress, right? That's not any great goal. It's a great goal to get there, but that's the starting. That's a jump off point, right? Because you can't even become a full-fledged first level spirit without fusion with that adjuster, right? So you can't even get to the first spirit level without it. So we have to go through all the Morancha levels. Now, if you're lucky enough to do it on this earth, it makes all that Morancha progression a piece of cake, doesn't it? Well, not a piece of cake, but a lot easier, because you've already gotten what? The will of God incorporated in your being.
And so no one has, very few have achieved it here on earth.
Very few.
We know only very few.
Enoch, yeah.
We know who now?
Enoch.
Enoch.
Jeremiah.
Elijah.
Elijah, yeah.
Elijah.
Jesus.
Jesus.
That's it.
That's it.
That's all we
That's all we
know.
know.
That's all
There's
we
no
know.
But
other-
we can't be discouraged at that, because all planets get to the point when they get to light and life that this becomes a common occurrence. Y'all remember that? So when this planet
It's
gets
not going to happen in our lifetime.
more
Yeah.
spiritual, it'll eventually get to the point where
Well, what level do
many
you think as we grow that we get to here before we leave here? Most, I mean, say the average person, you know, would you say that we make it to 2?
no.
No,
No.
1.
I'd say we probably make it to the first remedial.
And that's what I was wondering. I was wondering because I haven't got to the psychic circles yet, and I'm biting at the chunk to read that, but I'm still not trying to get ahead in the book because I just want to get the whole concept down first, and then I'll start. But I haven't got to that, and so but I remember when I was about 5 or 6 years old, sitting in the, and I can't say, but it's just certain things that I remember that was important. But I remember when I was about 5 or 6 years old, sitting outside, kind of like on a stump or something like that, wondering what I was going to do with the rest of my life, and how something was inward were guiding me in these thought patterns as far as family and all of this stuff like that. And then
That's pretty amazing.
It
yeah,
is.
and then 20. And so when I was reading this, I had those flashbacks to those certain times in my development, and I wondered why at those certain times. I remember that as a boy, sitting out there in the front of the yard, thinking of what I wanted, and sometimes children, and even the wife and sex and all those things came in that picture. That's what I'm saying. And so when I read part of that in here, I had that flashback to those times. And I was like, wow.
That may be in the arrival of your thought adjuster.
And that's what I'm saying. And so, and when I was reading it about when the first connection.
With God the Father.
Yeah, because I'm sitting out there and I'm wondering. And and this is, and that's what came on me.
Mm-hmm. Now think about this. I don't want to get too far off base here. We need to keep going. But think about this. If all children were taught at that age, when they start feeling those things, the love of God rather than the fear of God, think of how much better your life would be.
Oh my gosh, this whole world.
The world would change. Wouldn't That's why this is so important to teach children these concepts. You know, people think they're too difficult. They're not too difficult.
No.
When you can put a computer in front of a child and in 3 months they can be running around that computer like it's nothing. No, they can learn. Those brains are sponges. You know, but we're feeding it the wrong
thing.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I was amazed at the things that my daughter knew about God at 8 years old.
Oh,
More-
yeah.
More than I knew.
Yeah.
More than I knew.
Start them up out then. Think of where they would be now reading this stuff. You know. Okay, let's keep going. Let me go forward. This is good.
When we attempt to conceive of perfection in all phases and forms of relativity, we encounter 7 conceivable types. 1. Absolute perfection in all aspects.
Let's go through these as we go. It would be faster. Okay, I'm gonna let you read the whole.
Okay.
Okay.
2. Absolute perfection.
Well, let's go back to 1. Absolute perfection in all aspects. Who would that be?
Trinity.
Trinity, right? And God the Father, right? Okay.
2. Absolute perfection in some phases and relative perfection in all other aspects.
Okay. Who would you think that might be?
The sons.
The sons,
Michael.
Michael's, maybe even the Supreme, right? Because it's experiencing, it's got perfection to start out with, and it's having experiences which are maybe imperfect, but it's incorporating those experiences in its personality, right?
What about the Ancient of Days? What would it
Ancients of Days, I would think we're probably more likely more close to number 1, because the Ancients of Days are the judges of the universe. I would think Ancients of Days and the 7 Master Spirits would probably closer to 1. You know,
Wouldn't the Michaels be also, since they are?
they're perfectly created, but they're going through the experiential part,
Right.
you know, of creating. And so they may, you know, that's why they have free will and choice. Think about this. Michael can choose to assume his local universe before he finishes his 7 bestowals. You know that, right?
Right.
But none of them ever do. Why? Because it's not the will of God. But because they have that free will, they have a choice to choose imperfection, don't they? No, none of them have ever done it. But that choice is still there.
Yeah, but it's not only them. It's like I suppose the Ancient of Days, or even
All
the,
of them do.
even
yeah.
the beings in paradise. I would imagine they have will as
Will
well.
of choice.
And
That's right.
Could theoretically mess up. In practice,
Oh,
none
yeah.
does. But
Yeah.
it's.
I can't imagine the 7 Master Spirits of the Ancients of Days, though. Although, if you think about it, the Ancients of Days, there's 3 of them. Why would there be 3? To keep that from happening, right? They don't want to make a mistake, so
Checks
they.
and balances.
It's a checks and balance system. That's why there's 3 Ancients of Days for every super universe, right? So that's why there's 21 Ancients of Days.
And master spirits have to. How do that work?
They answer only to the Paradise Trinity and God the Father. They're the supreme executives of the super universe. You think about it. Okay, so let's keep going. Number 3.
3. Absolute, relative, and imperfect aspects of varied association.
That would be anybody that's associated with this experiential growth, isn't it? When you think?
But how can you have absolute perfection in some phases and imperfect aspects in others?
Okay, how about the Supreme Being? It's created perfect. Okay, people don't realize the Supreme, you know, they think that the Supreme is non-existent. It's not. It was created by the Paradise Trinity perfect. But its growth, before it becomes into full fruition, its growth is through experience. But it's got a perfect aspect to it because it was created that way. If you can think of it, the Supreme is much like a fragment of God that is growing. It's sort of like a thought adjuster, think about it.
But where is it imperfect?
So it's experience.
I can understand the relative one. But I understand the imperfection with us.
It's imperfect
Because
in
it's-
that it has to deal with
our
our
inexperience.
experience. That's right.
Our
Our
inexperience.
finite. That's
yeah.
why they call it a finite God. And anything finite is imperfect. You follow me? It's got some parts of perfection, but it's not 100%. It will be when it comes into what? Light and life. Because it will be totally aligned with the rest of the sea, with what? Paradise.
The beings that get to the point of thought adjuster fusion, in your opinion, do you believe that in the aspect at least of lining up the will to the will of God, can this be considered a form of absolute perfection?
Only the adjuster part, not the
Right,
not the finite
but-
part.
Well, right, but that is, can we call that a phase? One, because there are some phases where there can be some absolute perfection and
Yes.
imperfection in all others and some relative
Yeah.
in other. So
Yeah.
could it be a little sliver of absolute perfection?
There is in the thought adjuster itself. The thought adjuster itself is absolutely perfect.
Right, but right where we are right now, we have a thought adjuster working with us, but I think we would all agree that we all behave at the level 7 where there is absolutely no
No
perfection
perfection.
whatsoever. Yes. There is no relative perfection. It's all imperfection, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm just.
Yeah, but
So-
we're talking about our personality part of that. But there still is within us what? Perfection. In the thought adjuster. But it's not part of us yet, is it?
No.
Because we haven't fused.
Right, but
That makes sense.
we are working on perfecting ourselves.
Right.
Now, when we get to that
It's a
point,
potential.
It's a potential.
potential.
It's one of
So,
those
yeah.
potentialities.
so that's right. So we don't. There is no absolute perfection phase with us, even though there is with the thought adjuster, but it's this kind of a separate entity.
That's
When we
right.
do fuse, can we say that
We
there
probably
is a
reach.
piece of absolute perfection in
Yeah.
the combined being?
So at that point, we may be like number 4, right? Absolute perfection in some respects, the thought adjuster, and imperfection in all others. In other words, even though we fuse, we're still imperfect, right?
That's what I was thinking. I mean,
Yeah.
but I was wondering
Yeah.
what would be others' opinion. on
Yeah,
this.
that's what I would consider maybe number 4. Now, keep in mind that gives us no excuse to do what? What does God command us to do? Be ye perfect.
Mhm.
You know,
So,
and I was going to say that too. You know, with mainstream religion right now, in the churches, they're being taught that we were made perfect,
no.
when in actuality we was made
We were
imperfect
made imperfect.
to achieve perfection.
That's right. That's right.
Wow. You know, and so you know, if the world could just get that part of it straight.
Mhm. Now think about this. If that's the case, think about the Supreme Being. It's created in paradise, right? Things in paradise are normally perfect, right?
Right.
So it's got a part of perfection. But since it's created to experience finite existence, abstinent existence, and absolute existence, it's got what? It's got parts of imperfection in it.
Exactly.
Right. It's when it comes into full fruition, what happens? It becomes totally perfect, doesn't it? Because it's totally in sync with the 7 super universes, with the finite, the abstinent, and the absolute all come in sync with paradise and God the Father. Right? And at that point, then the Supreme Being is what? Perfect. Because it's experienced
All of that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And we made it through it.
And we made it, we helped do that.
Right, we got through it.
That's part of our divinity
Right.
lessons, right? Let's go on to the next one.
4, absolute perfection in some respects, imperfection in all others.
We just talked about that, right? Okay, how about number 5?
Absolute perfection in no direction, relative perfection in all manifestations.
Wouldn't you say that might be somewhere along the path of the mansion rules?
Let's see that.
Absolute perfection
Until we do.
in no direction, relative perfection.
Could it be all? I mean, a number of beings of the third source and center, like on the angel kind, and
Could be. It could be.
No, but it says absolute perfection in no direction.
No direction.
Angels have certain level, so there's no certain angel wouldn't have absolute
That's
perfection in no direction.
that's probably true. I would think
The
more.
will would not.
I would think more along the line of finite beings going through time. Now let's read this little yellow. There's a little star next to that. Let's read the first printing 5. Absolute perfection and no direction, relative perfection and all other manifestations. That is different than what it says there, isn't it? That's the first printing. Change 2, 5. Absolute perfection and no direction, relative perfection in all manifestations, other was removed. The original phraseology is incorrect because the reference to the manifestation requires the existence of one or more additional manifestations, which this other is being contrasted. As this particular phase of perfection exists in only one manifestation, relative perfection, there is no additional types which require or permit the use of other in this context. Their error occurred when other was inserted into the 1955 text during the republication transcriptions by accidentally repeating the pattern of the use found immediately before and after this sentence. Okay.
This is just grammatical semantic.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Okay.
So the other was there, and now it's
Not. Yeah. But
And
the
it was-
relative perfection in all manifestation, it still works the way it is. Right? Okay, let's go on to the next one.
6. Absolute perfection in no phase, relative in some, and perfect in others.
Okay, that's that could be someone who just fused with their adjusters, couldn't it? Or no, it wouldn't be because it's still no phase, isn't it? Okay, let's keep going.
7. Absolute perfection in no attribute, imperfection in all.
We could definitely agree that that would be a human, right? Okay, let's get one. All right, this is a chart of what we just talked about. I don't know if you want to look at that later. Okay. To God. Okay, Roy, you want to take the next one?
God, evolving mortal creatures experience an irresistible urge to symbolize their finite concept of God. Man's consciousness of moral duty and his spiritual idealism represent a value level and an experiential. Hit me with that word, Linda. Experiential.
experiential.
We get tongue tied with it sometimes. An experiential reality which gives difficult of symbolization.
Okay. So basically what they're saying here is we have an urge to put our concepts into the concepts of God, isn't it? Okay.
It seems to me what this is, one way of that I interpret that is that it's really hard to express the spiritual values in human words.
It is, and the experiential reality is even worse to try to.
We're all in a different place.
We're all in a different place, aren't we?
Right.
Yeah. You know, our experiences are different, so our experiential concept is different. Each and every one. It's individual.
That's why everybody's going to have something different to say about what something means.
That's right.
Because we all have different,
Because we all have different concepts of it. No? Okay.
because of our experience.
Let's go on to the next one. Rodney, you want to take that one?
Cosmic consciousness implies the recognition of the first cause, the one and only uncaused reality. God, the universal Father, functions on 3 deity personality levels of sub-infinite value and relative divinity expression.
Go ahead and read those next 3 sentences.
Number 1, 3 personal, as in the ministry of the Father fragments, such as the thought adjusters. 2, personal, as in the evolutionary experience of created and existences of certain axionite and associated beings.
Okay, so let's think about this. Okay, it's talking here that deity functions on 3 personality levels: pre-personal, personal, and super-personal. That's the 3. Okay, and they're a relative divinity expression. Okay, so this is an expression of deity. So pre-personal, that makes perfect sense as the thought adjuster, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because the adjuster obtains what from us?
Personality.
Personality, right? Even though it's God the Father that gives us personality, right? It's interesting that God gives us personality, but not His own Father fragment, isn't it?
But that's so cool.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, go ahead.
You know, that we can, you know, that our personality could
Fits
actually
onto
be
that thought
fused
adjustment.
and associated
Yeah.
with you know, Him, perfection. That's just
Okay, think about Jesus' thought adjuster. Okay, he had experienced a life with Melchizedek, right? And then he experienced a life with Jesus, right? And then when Jesus went back to being the Creator Son, that experience in that thought adjuster and that experience that he gained from being Jesus was what? Personalized. So he was given personality just like we are. So that Father fragment went from being a fragment of God, a piece of God, just like God Himself, to a personality. And that's the head of all the thought adjusters on the planet. What a concept! You know? Suddenly it's a real being. It's a sanctioned being then. Before that it was not, was it? Because it was part of God. Right? Okay. Personal. Personal beings are what? Us. We're given personality. We're on our way. We're on that finite ladder trying to become perfect.
we're the procreated ones. Though.
We're the procreated. We are created by what? A Creator Son.
Right.
Right? And a created Mother Spirit. So we are the children of the children. Think about it. We are the children of the Son of God, aren't we?
And even before, after that, depending on how you see it, we are the children
Children
of
of the
man,
Of the man,
share,
too. That's right.
right?
Son of man, Son of God. Does that not make sense?
That's right.
We are Son of... You remember when they talked about Jesus being the Son of Man and the Son of God? He was what? A physical son of a
Physical man
and woman, right?
You know what? I never did get that part straight until I read that.
Yeah, he's a person as a physical being just like we are, Son of Man, Son of God. But he was already the Son of what? He was Son of God the Father and God the Son.
Right.
Right? So he's the Son of God and the Son of Man at the same time. Now think about this. When we fuse with our adjuster, what do we become? Same thing.
A son of God.
Yeah, we become a son of God.
Yeah.
And Son of Man. Son of Man, Son of God, just like Jesus. Right? Because we came from a physical being, finite being, but we become sons of God when we fuse with that Father fragment, so that immediately puts us in the family of God. That's why they call us faith sons of God now, and real sons once we fuse with the adjuster. We have faith that we're going to fuse. That's what makes us faith sons of God, right? Okay. Now, think of the next term. This is kind of interesting. Superpersonal. As the eventuated existence of certain absonite and associated beings. So these beings have personality and plus, super personal. Okay, so they have personality just like we do, but they were eventuated. They weren't created. They came into existence as needed. Okay, but they're the next level up from the finite. They're the absonite. They're not what? They're not totally perfect, are they? They're learning just like we are. So it's part of that progression up to perfection. Think about it. We have finite, absonite, perfect.
So this week, Roger, I was reading somewhere, I can't tell you where I was reading it in this book, but I was reading that, you know, after all the 7 super universes reach light and life, we are going to begin to, you know, approach Havona and be these beings that we're talking about right now, these eventuated, like the Havona beings. Did I understand that correctly?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. We're not gonna become like them. We're gonna be introduced to them.
Mm-hmm.
We will associate with them. We will work with them.
Mm-hmm.
So we will work hand in hand with the absonite beings, right, as finite beings. By doing that, we gain experiences of what? Of the absonite way of life.
Mm-hmm.
So we go up the ladder. We get closer. Now, when we've mastered that through the 7 levels of the billion worlds of Havona, we have experienced everything absonite.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So once we've experienced everything absonite, what's the next step? Perfection. So we go to paradise and we experience perfection. And while we're in paradise, we meet whom? God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit. The 3 perfected deities.
So this is exactly what that is, those certain absonite beings and associated, beings, meaning potentially us.
Potentially us, and who else? How about the angels that train us?
Right.
Right?
All who are
All who are citizens of Havona,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
They would be the associated beings.
But they say certain absonite, so
Certain
it's not all of them.
Not all of them. What we keep forgetting all the way through this book is there's billions of other types of beings that they don't tell us about, right? That we're going to probably encounter. They only tell us the ones that we'll probably run into on our ascent to paradise. But that doesn't mean there's not billions and billions of other types of beings that are out there in the 7 universes. We would assume that there would be, that do other functions that's not directly related to the sea. So, okay. Let's move on. You keeping up with that?
2.6,
Okay.
God is a word symbol, yeah.
Okay, who's next here?
Is it me? Or is it you?
Did
I
you?
don't think Rodney just got to it. Anybody
Okay,
should
that
see.
was me. God is a word symbol designating all personalizations of deity. The term requires a different definition on each personal level of deity function and must be still further redefined within each of these levels, as this term may be used to designate the diverse coordinate and subordinate personalizations of deity. For example, the Paradise Creator Sons, the local universe fathers.
Okay, so these are, you know, we were talking about, you were asking about deity earlier. Okay, God, the word God is a word symbol to designate all personalizations of deity. So would it be correct to call the Creator Son God?
Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
that's what it says here.
Yeah, for all our intents and purposes, the closest concept we can come to God is what? The Creator Son, Jesus, right? And that's what they're talking about. They still must be redefined on each of these levels. Why do you think they have so many different types of deity to explain to us? The absolute, the absonite, you know, all these different manifestations of what? God. Okay? That does not take away from the Father. That does not take away from the I Am. These are just manifestations of Himself revealed to us through His children. Right?
But because it has to do with personality, right?
Yeah.
It sounds like that wouldn't apply to the thought adjusters, which seems a bit strange that thought adjuster wouldn't be considered God.
I know, that is strange. And we know it's a Father fragment, we know it's part of God, but they don't call it God. I think they may do that to keep us from getting the big head. Think, well, I am God. You know, I am the Father fragment. Yeah. That's probably why they don't explain
Some
it.
people do that anyway.
Yeah, they do. Little power corrupts, you know, absolute power corrupts absolutely.
But in a way, since we have personality and personality is from God, that's what we call personality is God in fact, right? Yes.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Jill, you want to take the next one?
The term God, as we make use of it, may be understood by designation as God the Father, by context, as when used in a discussion of some one daily level or association. When in doubt as to the exact interpretation of the Word of God, it would be advisable to refer to it to the person of the universal Father.
It's a perfect example of that, isn't it? You think about it, what we were just talking about. The term God by designation. The term God by designation would be what? Like God, the absolute God, the infinite God, all these other...
So we have to specify what God we're talking about.
What God we're talking about, that's right. That's by designation. In context, though, it says here, the exact interpretation of God, it's always wise to use what? God the Father, the first source and center, right?
Because ultimately it comes from Him.
Because
So
everything
we're
ultimately...
talking about a refinement from Him anyway.
That's right, that's right. All right, let's go to the next one.
The term God always denotes personality. So, deity may or may not refer to divinity personalities.
Now, how is that possible? How about the unqualified absolute?
I'm glad you said that because that's what I was thinking, so. Okay, good.
Or the thought adjuster, no?
No, not the thought adjuster, just the unqualified
Well,
absolute.
but
The unqualified absolute is not what? Divinity.
Not
Right?
finished.
Not deity. Not deity.
No,
It's divinity, it's not deity. Right? Okay. Hang on a second. When would you take the next one? Now this is going to be strange because of the way I set the slides. I want you to take the next two on these, okay?
2:11. The word God is used in these papers with the following meaning. 1. God the Father, creator, controller, and upholder. The universal Father, the first person of deity.
Okay, so that's our first concept of God, right? Those are all the first concept of God. Roy, would you take the next one, please?
God the Son, coordinating creator, spirit controller, and spiritual administrator. The eternal Son, the second person of deity.
Now, what is the Son's aspect? What his concentration is? It's the Spirit, right? Notice there it says co-creator. How does he create co-creator? He creates the Michaels, doesn't he? With whom? The Father. Okay. How about the Spirit controller? Everything in spiritual administrator, anything to do with the Spirit, is controlled by the spiritual circuit. You remember on that chart, the universe reality chart, it had 3 circuits,
Yep.
And what was the sun circuit? It was the spirit circuit. Remember that? Okay.
It's interesting when reading the paper on the eternal Son, it also refers to God the Son as the universal mother.
Universal mother. Mother and father, doesn't
Mother
it?
and father.
Mother and father. That's right. And considered the second person of deity. Go ahead.
No, I was just listening.
Oh, okay. I thought you were very
I
much.
was just listening.
Oh, okay. All right. Rodney, you want to take the next one?
God the Spirit, conjoint actor, universal integrator, and mind restorer. The infinite Spirit, the third person of deity.
Okay, look at this sentence closely. You can gain a lot from looking at the words in some of these paragraphs and think through them. The conjoint actor. Why do you think it's called the conjoint actor?
Because it plays different roles.
It plays different roles. It acts with other parts of the Trinity. Sometimes it acts with the Son, sometimes it acts with the Father. Sometimes it acts with both. So that's why they call it the conjoint actor. It rarely acts on its own behalf. It mostly acts with others. Now, it can act on its own behalf in what? The universal integrator. It integrates the spirit and the mind and the physical all together. mixture of the personality, the mind, the spirit, and one other thing, what? The adjuster. 1 and 3, right? Those 4 things creates a soul. It's this mysterious part that is created by mixing these things together. And when you get to the Morancha world, what is it that awakens?
The soul.
The soul. So you have to have those things, 3 things to make a soul. So who do we have to even get to the first level? We have to have God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They're necessary for us to get past this level. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The infinite spirit, of course, the third person of deity. That's the Trinity, right? Okay. You just read that.
Should have just read.
Yeah.
Did you just read?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, it's my turn. 4. God the Supreme. The actualizing or evolving God of time and space. Personal deity associatively realizing the time-space experiential achievement of creature-creator identity. The Supreme Being is personally experiencing the achievement of deity unity as the evolving and experiential God of the evolutionary creatures of time and space.
Sorry.
I had it right there.
Yeah. Okay, so God the Supreme. The personal deity associated realizing time and space experiential achievement of what? Creature, creator, identity. So God the Supreme is experiencing the mixture of what? The finite with the perfect, isn't it? Because the perfect comes from where? The thought adjuster. The finite comes from us. That creates an experience, and that mixture and experience goes into what? God the Supreme. And as the universe evolves, that experience becomes part of the experience of God the Supreme. That's why he's coming into fruition. Because as we experience things, he experiences things.
Potentials are becoming actuals.
Potentials are becoming actuals. That's right. Now, did the Supreme, was it alive before all this started? Yes.
Well, it's in spirit form.
Yeah, in paradise, right? Created by whom? The Trinity. Make sense? So it's always been there, but it's coming into full fruition through the experience. Its purpose is being fulfilled, isn't it? So that's part of God that God already knows what happens. The I Am already knows from the beginning to end. This is that part of God that he separated himself from himself with the Trinity so that he could actually gain the experience of what it was like to be imperfect. Is that not special? I want to see what... Huh?
Would it be proper to say that we're all part of an experiment?
You could say so, Rodney. It's a big experiment. That's maybe why they call it experiential, because it is an experiment. We're experimenting with what? Being finite, trying to reach perfection. And that's the big experiment. Now, what happens when someone chooses not to survive and not go to the mansion world?
They don't wake up.
They don't wake up.
They just,
That part of the experiment
It's
dies.
And I talk to people that believe that if you don't accept that part of you right here, that we got many more chances. No, that's not what it says.
That's not what it says.
It says that you don't.
You have your engines that will argue that point with you.
Exactly.
You do.
But I've read that,
Yeah.
and is that you will not wake up. Not that you will.
You must make final decisions here. Doesn't it say that?
Yes.
These decisions are made here, not
Exactly.
there.
Not there. You don't
It
get a
says-
chance to wake up and say, "Hey, I got this new body. I think I'll take this."
That's right.
That's not quite true. There are some people who, it says that there is mercy, and those who haven't had a chance to make a decision will get a chance to do it later on.
But they have to make a decision to survive past this world. That's what we're talking about. In other words, if you don't believe that, how could we say this? If you don't believe in your own survival, not forever, just past this world, you won't wake up.
So you know, and I mean, there's people that believe that.
It says that.
People
It
live
says
like
decisions, and I
Yeah.
wish I had the quote. It says decisions must be formulated
exactly.
here.
Must
I
be.
probably got it
Must
marked
be.
here somewhere.
It doesn't say should be. It says must be.
If that wasn't true, Jesus would have never said what he said to the Pharisees in that last sermon when he told
No.
them you're at the crossroads.
See,
No,
this,
it's
this
very
is
different because if you do make the decision to be evil and selfish and or simply make the decision to not survive, you will not. If you have made it here,
right.
and the purpose of being here is to make the decision, hopefully the good one. Right? So if you make the good one, you keep on going. If you make the bad one, you stop here.
Right.
But those who haven't reached either of those decisions get an opportunity to do it later on. Like that would be the example of
Oh, I
the
see- I
children.
see what you're
that-
So you're saying in ignorance.
I see what you're
saying.
by
Ignorance,
default, if
yeah.
by this is the mercy, meaning that in case of doubt, because not everyone gets to make the decision, because if you live like in a very barbaric world where you have to be so focused with survival and
Right.
fighting, and you never
Exactly.
get a chance
So,
to,
yeah.
to think at that level, and you end up dying very young, then you didn't get a chance.
Yes,
So
I agree with
in
that.
those instances, you get the opportunity to do it later on.
Yes.
But-
yeah,
but
but
we'll-
that's out of ignorance, though.
Yeah.
If you come,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
if you come to that, that's totally something totally different
It is, yeah.
than what we're talking about. We're talking about a sanctioned being
Right.
that realizes what's going on in this life,
You-
right?
Right.
For
Well,
example,
but
a
that's, how many people are we talking about? I mean,
Who's to say?
who's
Yeah.
to say exactly? But
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is not
We can't judge, can
right.
we?
We cannot. We cannot.
We can't judge.
But-
But
but-
it does say in the book that these decisions must be made here. Now, it doesn't qualify that. But it also says, it's just like you said, the children wake up in the mansion worlds. Those who don't get of age for a decision, they wake up in the mansion worlds and are given out opportunities and all that. You know, I don't disagree with any of that. That's what it says in the book. But it doesn't say that about living, thinking adults, does it? Out of stupidity.
And that's what you got to think about. It's people that walk and breathe and go through life every day thinking that, you know, this is it. You know, I'm gonna do whatever I can, however I can, you know, and I'm gonna die.
Now, to me, that's a decision. That's not ignorance. That's a decision.
Yeah, that's a decision.
They don't have faith. Without faith, there is nothing, right?
I
And
agree
it-
with you.
It's a lack of faith. But in making that decision that they have no faith, they've already made their decision.
Exactly.
Because they did. But what about those who have? I've encountered people where I start
I
talking
think
with
what
them.
you're talking about something's totally different, Gio, because you're talking about somebody that has not come to a place or opportunity in their life to make that decision. That's a difference.
Right, or live at such a barbaric level, and I think there are a number of them that they just don't even. I've met some people where I started bringing topics of that sort. They'll be, wow, I never think about that, and they even some of them even thank me for being, wow, I never thought. So what about those who never even?
But
bothered
God
thinking about
says, "I am."
Let me restart this.
And I am means that He can meet anybody at the level where they are. So you know, I mean, you just look around, just our world. Religion comes in all shapes and forms. Everybody got a different take on how things should be or should not be. So you know, it's not like even if you're barbaric, you have some kind of a code that you know you
Yes.
live by.
Yeah.
And how you know that's not God meeting them where they are?
Not everybody has the same capacity.
Yeah.
They don't.
We're not all
everybody does.
equal.
We're not equal. You
Unlike
know.
what the Bill of Rights says.
Yeah, we're really not equal.
No.
We have different education levels, different weight concepts of that sort of thing. But what it does state in the book is those sort of things will not penalize you for that decision.
Right, that's right.
You know, so we can't really say, well, you're not going to make it to the mansion world to make that decision later. I don't know. But it does state that decisions must be made here. So for the average person, for most of us, that's what needs to be done. Now, I'm sure there's exceptions. I'm sure there's whole societies that's lived without any concept of God. When they get you know, when they die, they may get to the mansion worlds with remedial training and said, at some point you have to make this decision, you know, but it's not an extended amount of time. Even the mansion worlds, by the time a being reaches the age of 16 to 18, I think they said, they have to make a survival decision. You know.
But also too in that, God's mercy is so merciful that, you know, when I was reading about the beings, the actual residents of our super universe, those are the beings that first came into consciousness of God. So it wasn't, I mean, so they weren't as advanced as we are, and God made provisions for them in this universe. Now they can't go outside of this universe. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, that's right. They're wards of the local universe because they never got spiritually in this life to the point where they could fuse with their adjusters. So most of them are given sun fragments of the local universe or spirit fragments, one of the two. And those become citizens of the local universe. They don't ever go on to paradise. So some of them exceptions do, but very few. But that's because they grew up in an environment that was ungodly, you know, and basically they never developed a capacity for God thought. Right? Now, in that case, this is what Jill is probably talking about, as these beings did not have enough concept to even make a decision. You follow me? So they would go into the mansion worlds and probably put in some sort of remedial class to get them to the point where they can make a decision to decide. And if they did decide to survive it, in that case, they would be given what? A spirit fragment or a sun fragment, because they don't have capacity to fuse with an adjuster.
But do anybody feel that we have there's a society, a group of people living here today that doesn't?
Not really.
Not really.
Not anymore.
Oh.
So really, if you think about society, has touched every aspect of human existence.
Exactly.
It has. So everyone is given an opportunity on this life to make some kind of spiritual choice. And I don't care if it, you know, you can call it God, you can call it Buddha, you can call it whatever you want to call it. It's still the same concept of God the Father, isn't it? Okay? That's what it boils down to. So you either believe in something or you don't. And you can make that decision in this life that I will not survive. I don't believe in the hereafter. I have no faith in the hereafter. And in that case, you will not go on to the hereafter because you've made your decision.
Atheists, they don't believe in God.
Not necessarily. There are, as I recall reading in a book that for some atheists, the fact that they claim to be atheists and they work hard on making their argument is in a way
their religion,
a sign of spiritual activity.
Yeah.
Not fully attuned and aligned, certainly, but it's a sign. And who is to say who are those who are atheists who are not making the decision of continuing versus those who are atheists and are? I know a friend of mine who I believe may be in that case, because he's very, to a certain sense, very nice, pure, and but definitely very, very extremely rational, to the point where everything is a chemical reaction and there is no God. But in his thought process, he's very active, and in my mind, he may be, I don't know for a fact for sure, but he may be one of that type.
Well, the other thing is to consider is this: remember, at judgment, when you die, you go to Salvington for judgment, and you're through reflectivity, I guess. You stand before the Ancients of Days, and if there is nothing salvageable about you, the adjuster doesn't show up. Only your guardian angels, right? So when they call your name for judgment, you're not conscious. You're not there.
Right.
Only your guardian angel, and it testifies whether you have anything salvageable or not. Now, if the adjuster does not show up, that means what? You had nothing salvageable.
So you won't wake up.
So you won't wake up.
So really, that is already the decision's made if your adjuster doesn't show up.
That's exactly right, and that happens at death.
Yeah.
Right? So there is no second chance at that. So if there's nothing salvageable, you won't wake up on the mansion worlds. But what you're talking about is several different things at once, you know. And we can't really judge to say who is salvageable and who is not.
Exactly.
You know, I think, let me interject something into here. I think that because we're on a planet where the rebellion happened, I think that there are many, you know, let's call them religions right now, who have literally made it so difficult and put such a tremendous stumbling block and an obstacle in front of people to, you know, them actually believing in God. I think that there's going to be great mercy, you know, given to everyone that's been here, that's experienced, you know, one of these many religions that we have on this planet, who just, you know, interprets God and faith in such an obtuse way that the person says, "Oh my goodness, I could never believe in you know what I'm saying?"
Exactly.
In something like that.
Yeah.
You know, there's going to be great mercy, I think, shown to, you know, for people who find themselves in that position. I think.
Yeah, I
Well,
believe
it's
so.
not about religion, that's the point.
Exactly.
It's an
Right.
individual
Yeah,
thing.
Right.
it's a decision of for each.
But
and
you
every
know,
person.
religion puts itself in the position of pointing the way to God.
Well, there are so many people, there's, you know, certainly in our generation have actually rebelled against religion, but not God.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And-
yeah,
and not
that's
only
true.
that,
That's true.
When we read this, and I don't know about everybody else, a year and a half ago, you couldn't tell me I would look at the Pope last night on TV and feel joy that he was holding a baby, uniting just some kind of representation of God. But see, as you come into knowledge, and your concepts and broaden, then you can see more of the picture. See, what we have is more of the picture. And so I couldn't accept the Pope a year and a half ago. The Pope, you know, you said you was Catholic. I was through.
Yeah,
you know, that was it.
You
Yeah.
know, I was in the convent for a while, and one of the things with the Pope is the previous popes have represented themselves as God. This Pope that now we have, or is part of the Catholic Church, represents himself as a servant of God.
Okay.
You know, and so
The
that's
head of his church
Of
is
his
what
church.
that's the difference. And so many popes down through the years have taken on, just like the Romans did and Caesar did. They become living gods, right? And they're not.
Exactly.
They never should have been in that position. And that's not what Jesus intended with the church either. You know, I don't care what anybody says. So we got way off track anyway to look at. And the Catholic Church, as far as I'm concerned, is still a little bit off track. It's trying to do good. It's trying to get its
get
bearings back on track again. Now, how successful it's going to be at that, who's to say? But I give the guy credit for trying to do that.
And my point is
You know,
that
that's all there is to it.
there's,
So,
I don't sit in judgment of what a person believes anymore, because I've come up to Baptist, I've been John Jehovah's Witness, Seventh-day Adventist, you know, so I've got.
we're all searching for what?
Exactly.
Same thing. God the Father.
Right.
We're all looking for the same thing.
And so, you know, I don't listen to man's twist of what things should be anymore, of what, you know, I just don't do that anymore. You know.
It always comes back to the first paragraph of this book, right? How we've distorted our concepts of deity to unrecognizability is what it is. And that's really what this book is doing, trying to get us back on track. Right?
expand our consciousness.
If I can make one final point to your point, actually, in the
Yeah.
book, there is something that comes to my mind regarding when Jesus would go with his apostles and talk and preach and talk to some people. Several times I think they make the point of Jesus saying, let's win some soul, or let's save, the concept of saving.
Saving souls. Yeah.
Saving soul, which I think makes your point in the sense that contributes to that triggering point of
Decision.
of stimulating people
Yeah.
to think and get on the way, which is the starting point, which is the decision point that is
Right.
necessary for being saved, which means to survive.
Yeah, survival. Really. That's really what saved is about, isn't it? I mean, it's just survival past this life.
It's really starting the process, and by
Yeah.
and
So
by
if it was
decision.
automatic, he would have never said that, right?
That's your point.
That's
Yes,
true.
absolutely.
Yeah.
He would have never said that.
Yeah. Yeah, what was it? I'm here to save souls. You know? And that's what-
Seek and save the lost.
Or they would say Jesus by these
Those who are already-
saves thousands of
So
souls.
I came
Yeah.
into the world not to condemn the world. I came in the world
not to condemn
to
the world,
condemn
to save
that, but
it.
through me the world might be saved.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of beings, a lot of creatures going the wrong pathway, aren't they? If that's the case. So anyway, well, listen, we need to knock off. It's 12. Where are we at here? We're at
Just finished God the Supreme.
2:14. Okay. 2:15. Did you write that down somewhere? Okay. So this is 2:15. Slide 41.
That's what's so beautiful about this. It gives you a chance to broaden your concept of what's is, what's being told to you,
Mm-hmm.
and actually, and we still have no actual idea of what God has. But I'm telling you what, like I say, if this was taught in mainstream churches, and people could sit down and talk like we're talking, and this is the change.
Yeah.
I think so too. I agree with you.
Yeah.
This is the change right here.
On
And
the
it
way over
disappoints
here,
me to see so few people here.
And
I
I-
mean, it really
yes.
does. I mean, I struggle with this every week, you know, because we're trying to just teach the book. That's all we're trying to do, you know, and share with each other, really, you know. So,
This is an indication of the level of interest
I know.
of a lot of people.
The truth, yeah, it is. Let's say a little prayer, and then I'll knock off the recording here. Jill, would you like to pray for us today? Tonight? What does it say?
Dear Father, Universal Father, thank you for this opportunity to study your word, your wisdom, from being the frame of reference and reality for us. As usual, it's been a great event, but for me personally, and I hope for everyone else. And I pray that we keep on gaining your insight and share the word and truth with our fellows throughout the week, and that we can do your will. Thank you so much again.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, let me kill the video here. Y'all won't have much, right?
Amen. But you know what? That's another thing. You can just what we read today. If